And tomorrow, the 20th of October, marks exactly 5 years from the tragedy that was the same date at the Lekki Tollgate shooting here in Lagos. So most Nigerians will remember where they were. Some were even in that crowd when soldiers that day swooped and opened fire on peaceful protesters out to speak up against police brutality. To this day, the question on who gave the order to shoot still remains to be answered. Then the number of victims from that unprovoked attack still remains unclear. And for those reasons and more, public anger still persists, despite the judicial panel of inquiry set up by the Lagos state government, as there's also still an apparent lack of political will to actually implement what the people protesting were asking for. I'm now being joined by Femi, who is the managing director of Linkstride Security Systems Limited, which is a security and safety engineering company, for his thoughts on those, security-related developments I just discussed and the possible ways through which they can impact the fluid security situation in Nigeria at the moment. So, thank you for joining us, Mr. Dare, from the screen. Good to have you here.
Yeah, good afternoon, Aneze. Happy Sunday to you.
Yes.
And happy Sunday to the rest of the...
Absolutely. Happy Sunday. So,
thank you for inviting me.
Of course. Sure. So I think I'll start with a brief question, because the Nigerian military has come out to say that, denied these coup attempts, but I think that it's still significant any way you look at it that we're even discussing a coup attempt in Nigeria in 2025. I mean, how should people be seeing this? Even if it has been denied, it's still a significant topic of conversation, right?
Well, like they say, there's no smoke without fire most of the time, but from what we know in Africa, in recent development, and by level of our level of sophistication and civilization, I don't think it's what we should have be thinking about at this time. There's no military personnel that will, in all sense of reasonableness, think he can propagate a coup in Nigeria. Because Nigeria right now is even going beyond the issue of having a coup. Yes, there's no doubt about it. People, there'll always be resistance, people trying to instigate the state against the government and all of that. And, some people might just feel they can take advantage of the current hardship in the country to initiate suggestions of coup, but I don't think that is a reality. It's not something that can happen.
But then in terms of how people should be seeing this, though, regular people who hear that the military is denying that there was a coup attempt in 2025, how should the public be seeing this?
Well, you see, first of all, we have to understand that Nigeria is listed among the countries of low-intensity conflict at this point. We've been fighting Boko Haram since 2009 and stuff. And, there's been a lot of pushback, thinking about where we're coming from, how we got to where we are at this point. It's just that successful government have not been able to take the responsibility of educating the people. So because if you do not create the consciousness of the Nigerian people to bring them to your side, then the enemy you begin to give the enemy the wrong narrative, to give them the impression that they're winning the war. We must understand, as a country, we must hold on to our nature and our culture. What Africa is really missing is that Africa doesn't have a culture, like other advanced countries. And when you try to compare our level of civilization with the civilization you have in the Western world and all of that, we cannot compete, because their level of civilization is too sophisticated for the African culture. So until Africans begin to create their own culture and believe in their culture, then I don't see how we're going to make progress. So the narrative will always come. Yeah, there's a coup attempt. There's, especially when it gets to, political. The more you get to political election period, major presidential election period, you're bound to hear a whole lot of stuff, back and forth stories that will just try to, discredit the current government or try to propagate a new government and ideas like that. I don't think that's something we should take very seriously. We have more serious things to deal with as a people and as a country than to believe that a coup at this time is what Nigeria needs. It's not going to succeed because the people themselves would not accept it. The West African nations will not accept it. AU will not accept it. The recent coup that we experienced in Madagascar today, it has not been accepted. So I don't think that is, an issue of that we should really be worried about how people think about Nigeria, the military coup at this point, to be honest.
And then if it doesn't, matter so much internally, what about externally? I think from a global perspective, especially in light of, our vice president going to the United Nations General Assembly and asking that Nigeria gets one of the permanent seats on this UN Security Council, does this narrative of what's happening right now impact how we're seen by the rest of the world?
Well, you see, when it comes to politics and having a security seat at the council, don't forget that policy that is being elected at the United UN Council has a way of affecting the Africa as a region. The current problem we have in Africa today, the insurgence of banditry and destabilization of the African, the Sahel region and all of that, came from a policy from the United Nations. If you look at the Arab Spring policy during the era of Obama and the destabilization of Libya and the pollution of arms through the Sahel, Niger, affecting the northern part of Nigeria, that brought about banditry in our country. Having a seat in the UN will also be able to find a way, help us as Africans to be able to lobby our position. Because destabilizing Libya at some point without a backup plan, because I always tell people that the entry point shouldn't be your area of emphasis. It's the exit plan that is most important. Everybody can go anywhere. But how do you leave that place safe and healthy? That's most critical. So going to Libya, taking out Muammar Gaddafi without a post-Gaddafi plan in place, has brought Africa and the governors in all African regions into this mess that we're dealing with at the moment. Starting from the Arab Spring, from Obama and all of that. So having a seat, having a voice in the United Nations Security Council is a good thing that we must be able to try and see how we can position ourselves to be in that position. Mm-hmm. And of course, there'll be kickbacks here and there, but it's politics.
Mm-hmm. And you briefly started speaking about it, so we can go to the next topic. The U.S. discussing their stance on whether or not this, the mass killing of Christians is happening in Nigeria. We now have Bulos saying that that's not necessarily the case, putting him at odds with Senator Ted Cruz. Why are we seeing the U.S. so invested in this? Are you surprised from a security perspective that the U.S. has, feel the need to comment in this way?
I didn't quite hear that, sorry.
So the second topic was the Trump's advisor, Bulos, making comments that there isn't necessarily this issue of the mass killing of Christians in Nigeria. And my question was, why are we seeing the U.S., comment in this way, and also Bulos now at odds with U.S. Senator Ted Cruz? What's your reaction to this?
Yes. Well, that's very correct. That's very correct. Because if you look at the history, if you say there's Christian genocide in Nigeria, so first of all, you have to look at the policy of the state, the policy of the government. Is there any policy that drives that process? The answer is no. Everybody in this country is free to practice any religion of his choice. Even our current president is a Muslim and his wife is a Christian. So that gives us a window to understand that the policy of the government does not support genocide. Then what, you now go back and ask yourself, how did the issue of genocide become a narrative? Now, you go back again and find out how the issue of Muslims and Christians being killed in the northern part of Nigeria. You see trace it back to the Sahel, the ungoverned spaces, the proliferation of arms through the Sahel, through Niger, and into the northern part of Nigeria. In Sokoto, there was a killing in the mosque. Over 124 Muslims were killed. So this issue of banditry and Boko Haram has no color, has no religion, has no tribe. The minute you are not on their side, you don't practice their own kind of Islam, they are considered as an infidel. So we are all victims. And it depends, we all decide, we must decide as a people to defend our country, share information the way we should share with the right intelligence, so that we can put this whole banditry and all these killings behind us. And we need regional cooperation. Not just, because it goes beyond Nigeria alone, fighting this war. All our neighbors, comparing our level of civilization and sophistication, we cannot in any way compare. So there's lack of governance in those spaces. There are ungoverned spaces all over the place. There's lack of democracy. There's lack of policies from those other side countries, neighboring our country. So there must be some support. And I'm happy this present government in the United States, from the first time, the first time of Trump, actually, sold arms to us, which Obama did not do. And now coming again from this government, testifying the fact that from their own investigation, there's no Christian genocide in Nigeria, because more Muslims have actually been killed than Christians. That's just the truth.
Mr.
So they're very correct.
Mr. Femi Dare, thank you very much. We'll take a quick break and continue this conversation with you right after. Stay with us. Welcome back to Newsday. You're still with me, Anieza Osakwe, and we still have Mr. Femi Dare, who's the Managing Director of Linkstride Security Systems Limited, a security and safety engineering company, for his thoughts on those security-related developments we were discussing. So I think now we would want to move on to the anniversary of the Lekki Tollgate. It's now been 5 years, and I think, like I said earlier, it's an event that's so inculcated into the minds of Nigerians in the diaspora, Nigerians in Lagos, but also just Nigerians across the country. How are you seeing this event 5 years on, and what can be done, to improve how people feel when it comes to police brutality? It was a very unfortunate incident that happened 5 years ago. I don't think we should take the incident in isolation. Why? Because there were issues, the circumstances that preluded that protest. Don't forget, 5 years ago, we were on a lockdown experience. The COVID, kept a lot of people indoors. And looking at Nigerians for who we are social animals. We like to, the COVID, the post-COVID, and when the narrative of the NSAS protest came about, it was also a spring from that experience. So, to cut a long story short, I feel that the process was not properly managed, at some point. And, we also had the influence of, Kanu and, instigators from outside Nigeria, broadcasting, giving directives, giving some, directives that brought about killing of, burning police stations, killing of police officers, and all sort of destructions that happened in Lagos, and quite a lot of investment were lost in that process. A simple protest shouldn't have resorted to that. And when you look at a protest like that without proper leadership and structure, even at that point, you had a president, inviting leadership. There was no leaders to actually have that conversation with, But here we are, 5 years down the road.
There have been series of meetings. I think there have been some kind of moderating setup, compensation paid. I feel it's something we always remember, we always commiserate, because good or bad, whatever you see success or whatever you see failure did not start at the point those results are being expressed. Here we are, here we are really. I just feel that Nigerians should be wise enough to know that we cannot destroy what belongs to us. If you look at the global trend today, if you go to America with the current Trump administration, you see what ICE is doing to the Americans and non-American people. You know that everybody, all nations across the globe, they're not thinking for themselves. So we must come to realize that we must create our own culture, where Nigeria becomes Nigeria. Let Nigeria be our culture. Not Christianity, not Islam. Let Nigeria be our culture. That's the only way we can build our country for the good of all of us, because no other place you call home than your country called Nigeria. So yes, we immortalize those that have died, but here and there, but it happens. History has happened. And let's just be very focused. We've gone past the era of trying to exhibit things, taking very serious conversation because we want to trend on social media and put our country under the bus. There's no other country like Nigeria. We must stay focused and try to, create a culture. That's why China is what China is today. China is great today because China, the country China, is their culture. Every Chinese man you see today, the only thing he believes is that China is their culture. Because they've seen it all. So we're just 65 years old, and we can actually build a country that we'll all be proud of, because there's no other place like home.
And how do you see the country build that culture? What steps should be taken to build that culture where it's a country that we can all be proud of, that people feel safe and heard? How does one go about doing that?
Yeah. Okay. I'll just give you an example. Yes, if, for example, if I ask you a question, I don't know if I'm allowed to do that. If you promise the Nigerian army today, or promise every Nigerian today, that you'll give them an American visa and they become an American citizen, give it just to the Nigerian police or the Nigerian army, would you still have a Nigerian police and Nigerian army? They all want to leave. That's culture. But if Nigeria is their culture, they will not accept that offer. Rather, they will fight and defend and protect Nigeria. So until we get to the point where we all know that no matter what comes our way, we must fight and protect Nigeria. That's the culture. And that's what I think the government should start, expressing. We have several rounds of the 4 local government. Every leadership structure along that road has that responsibility. The resources that comes to the state is not for personal aggrandizement, for their own selfish reasons. And that is what is bringing about this. There's so much poverty, lack of education, and lack of sophistication in the mind of the people. So we are looking for the right leadership that will express this and know that there's a cultural issue that you must let an average Nigerian believe in their country. There are benefits that is entitled to everybody. Why should you alone be entitled to have good medical care outside Nigeria at the detriment of your own people? It's not right. So people will resist it. So not until we begin to share what belongs to all of us. And that's what happened in China. If you look at the history of China, how did China become great? They fought the Western influences from the Japanese empire. Just go through history, So no trillionaire today is bigger than the government in China. You can't say you're a trillionaire, you're bigger than China. No. So nobody should be bigger than Nigeria. So that's, I think, is a cultural issue. We should do more about that. Let us believe in our country. And it has to start from the top. Leadership is not about looting and stealing and corruption. We all belong to this country. This country is going to exist for another 500 million years. Because the world people just see the world as like what just came into existence in a few months or is in 200 years, or I mean, it's still a long way. So let's build a country we all be proud of, long when we all have been dead and forgotten. That's what leaders should do.
And that is a good note to end on. Mr. Femi Dare, thank you very much for joining me today on This Day Live for your insights.